Good day, and welcome to Soft Skills, Strong Results, Practical Strategies to Master Interpersonal Communication. I'm your host, Charlie Krebs. Today, we're going to get into some of the most important soft skills that people need to manage a successful business. My guest today is David Gallianetti. Welcome, David.
Hi, Charlie.
David is the Director of External Relations at Lakeland University in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And Lakeland University is a private liberal arts university focused on innovative ways to present higher education. David has been working in marketing and communication for over 30 years, so he brings a lot to the table today. So thank you for being here, David.
Pleased to be asked to help out, Charlie.
You're welcome. It's nice to see you. Let's get right to it. There are many definitions of communication out there. How do you define communication?
Well, I think simply it's our ability to interact with one another. That can be speaking in real time, face-to-face in a classroom setting or in a meeting, or interacting with a spouse, significant other. It can be virtually, like we're doing right now. It can be over the telephone. It could be written, email, a letter, a personal letter, a professional letter, making a social media post, which a lot of us are commonly doing these days. But it all comes down to that interaction that we're having with another person or a group of people. And obviously it varies between people of different ages and places and languages, but really simply it's just that ability to interact with one another.
Do you think that ability to interact has changed over the years? I mean, when I was growing up, we certainly didn't have any of the digital tools that we have now. So do you think that communication, no matter what platform we're on, is still communication? Or do you think that this digital world has fundamentally changed what communication is?
Yeah, it's changed it quite a bit. I mean, I started at Lakeland in 2000, and this is my 25th year here. And I think about how much it's changed. When I started, there was no social media. Facebook didn't exist. In fact, I can remember when Facebook was a college-only platform. You had to have a .edu email in order to be able to sign up for Facebook. And I remember the student who wrote to Facebook and brought Facebook to Lakeland, and the local paper, the Sheboygan Press, my former employer, did a story about the Facebook has arrived at Lakeland College. It was Lakeland College at the time. In my business, which is trying to reach people and tell the story about Lakeland University, there's so many platforms that people are on now. We still have people on some of those traditional platforms that you just alluded to. But when you think about the social media landscape, my gosh, Facebook, X, Snapchat, all of the other platforms that are out there, YouTube, everything. Where is your audience at? It's very fractured. There's people all over the place. There's some people that still wouldn't mind getting a postcard in the mail. There's some people that wouldn't mind still getting a letter, still getting a hard copy magazine. So for us, the challenge is communicating with all of those people across this wide spectrum of platforms.
Right. When you're talking about postcards, I know that I send out still around 200 Christmas cards. And sometimes people say to me, you still send Christmas cards? They're so easy to do. It's like, I know, but I number one, I like the writing of it. And I think that I like to get actual cards. It's like reading a book or reading a book on the internet or something like that.
Absolutely. I still like to read real books. I'm not a Kindle person.
Me too.
I like to read real books. So go figure. We're throwbacks, Charlie.
We are. We're good throwbacks.
Exactly.
So within communication, the focus of the podcast today is to talk about soft skills. And there are a lot of potential definitions of that. But how do you define soft skills?
Well, really, it's just those intangible skills that I think you bring to whatever platform you're addressing, your personal space, your workplace, whatever it is. It's those intangible skills that you possess, that you use every day. In many cases, I think there's skills that a lot of us have naturally, and over time we can hone and develop those skills to varying degrees, based on our occupations, what we're doing, where we live, who we're interacting with, et cetera. But I think a lot of them are part of us all the time. and we just get opportunities to make them better over time.
Well, what you're saying is that sometimes soft skills come to some people more naturally and they don't come to other people as naturally. Why do you think that is?
Well, we're all different, right? Each of us is an individual, and while we might all possess some of the same soft skills, we're all different. You'll hear that phrase sometimes that, oh my gosh, Charlie's a natural born leader, right? He just has those leadership skills that come out when he's around a group of people. Some folks are comfortable speaking in front of a group, and others are not. Everybody can do it, right? Everybody can physically stand in front of a group and talk in front of them. But some people just naturally are drawn to that and inspire people, and they draw the energy from the group, the crowd that they're talking to, where others are terrified. I mean, Charlie, I'm sure that in the years that you taught public speaking here at Lakeland, you ran into a variety of kids who, some that would naturally just stand in front of the class and deliver a speech and they were fine, might probably needed some of your expertise on honing and enhancing their technique. And others that would rather run out of the room and cry than stand in front of that group, right? They both could physically stand there and do it, but the soft skill was, can you do it well? And then are you coachable? Can you learn some skills? I'm sure you could think of students that would fit into both slots and all in between, right?
Right. I remember a student one time that every time she gave a speech, she would break down. She couldn't finish the speech. She would end up crying and she'd walk off, and people were very supportive of her. And then for her final speech, she did the entire speech without breaking, without crying, without stopping. And she got a standing ovation from people. So
that's great.
Talk about making progress.
Right.
Do you think that soft skills impact the message? I mean, we have a lot of different messages out there. But do you think soft skills can impact how people perceive the message?
I do. I think they're the skills that allow us to communicate our message effectively, really. Let's say I needed to give instructions to you or to a group of people. Am I doing it in a way that's clear to people? I don't want to leave questions. If I'm giving my team some instructions and when I leave the room and have them do whatever they need to do, I want to make sure that I'm answering their questions and that they're clear on what they have to do. So if we're working in a group or a team setting, I want people to understand my role. What is it that I bring to the table for the team? How am I going to help us get from point A to point B or whatever it is we have to do? So those soft skills that we have can help impact the message by how we're delivering it and making sure that people are reading us, understanding us, and have a limited number of questions. The other thing, too, is if they have questions, it's the ability to sense that those are there and encourage people to ask them, create an environment where people are comfortable asking their questions. So again, when I leave and they have to do what they have to do, they know what they have to do, and they've had the comfort level with me to ask the questions that they need to get the direction that they need.
So when you talk about how people deliver, are you saying that our personality becomes part of the way people perceive the message?
Absolutely. People's perception of us as an inviting person versus someone who might be an intimidating person. I've had different relationships with different supervisors over the years. And if I have sensed something apprehensive, adversarial, something like that, I might be less likely to approach them with a question, with a problem. So that's a barrier to us being able to communicate with one another. And those are soft skills. Now, what soft skills did my supervisor have to be able to detect that was a barrier for me so that we could work through that, and that's on them a little bit, is how do we come together to kind of tear down some of those walls that might be between us so that we can work together effectively. And that happens in relationships between people too, right? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to communicate effectively with somebody. Again, what are those barriers that are up between the two of us that are now not allowing us to be able to be heard, to be seen, whatever, what we're trying to communicate.
So if you are communicating with somebody and they seem adversarial and you're feeling that there are barriers up there, what kind of soft skills can you use to help break down some of those barriers?
I think a couple that come to mind for me, people need to listen to hear. They need to listen to understand as opposed to listening to respond. I think today people are so quick to respond because in this social media age, we're all content creators all of the time. We have all of these platforms where we can create content either by typing or by sending images, sending videos, creating those. I was a newspaper reporter before I came to Lakeland, and it was my job to listen because I was taking that information that people were giving me, and then I was distributing it, writing my stories and communicating it out to my audiences. So it was important for me to listen to understand so that when I was communicating that message out, that I was sharing exactly what they were saying and sharing the message that they were saying, as opposed, and was I asking follow-up questions? Was I responding to them? I was. But in order to ask those follow-up questions, I had to listen and understand. And if there wasn't something I understood, then I would say to them, you mentioned this just a little bit ago, and I don't really completely understand that. Explain that a little bit to me. So I think that's an important skill for sure, is the ability to listen, to hear, and to understand as opposed to react right away.
So if you were working with someone that was one of those people who listen to reply, they may not be aware that they're that kind of person. They're so busy trying to figure out what they're going to say in response to what the person is. How would you get them to try to transition to be somebody who listens to understand?
It's hard. It would depend upon my relationship with the person. If it were someone that I was close to and that I felt connected to, I would probably be pretty blunt with them and say, listen, there's really something that you're doing that you need to work on, and that is a barrier in your ability to communicate with people. And you're always thinking ahead. You're not listening to what people are saying. You're starting to immediately think about how you're going to respond as to really listening to what people are saying. And let's work on some ways for you to get beyond that. If I don't have that kind of relationship with them, I guess it's ultimately going to be me reacting to what they're saying, probably having to unfortunately repeat some of the things that I've said to them in hopes that maybe it'll click. It's going to take a little bit longer conversation. I think you can get there eventually. I mean, we can all learn. We're all capable of learning. But at some point, it probably is going to take a somewhat blunt conversation saying, I need you to reframe how you're listening to conversations and how you're reacting to conversations.
So what is, simple question, but what is good listening?
Wow. It's hearing. It's hearing what people have to say. I know it sounds repetitive, but it's truly listening. You and I are listening to each other right now, and we're having a dialogue. We're having a conversation, and I'm reacting to you, but I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm listening to your questions. You're listening to my responses, and you're coming up with follow-up questions for me, but they're based on what I'm saying. You're actually listening to me. And I think listening is a very active, it's a participant sport. It's very active, and you have to be engaged. Too often now we're distracted, right? We've got social media platforms. Our attention spans have dropped dramatically. We know in the messaging that we're putting out there, we're doing a lot more video, and we talk about the length of those videos. And with Snapchat and some of the other platforms, people are flying through videos very quickly. If we don't grab their attention within the first couple of seconds, they're gone. So I think listening in that sense has become more challenging because you have to say things or put things out there that are going to grab people's attention right away to connect them so that they're going to give you a couple more seconds and continue to listen.
So if you're having a conversation with someone, I know I used to have students come in my office all the time, but if you're having a conversation with someone and you know that they're not listening. They may be looking around the room. They may be checking their phone. They may be doing any number of things, but you can tell their attention is not with you. How does that make you feel?
Not being listened to, right? Not accepted, not engaged. They're clearly somewhere else. They're clearly in a place maybe they don't want to be. And again, I think it comes down to that relationship that you have with them. Do I have the kind of relationship in that scenario that you just painted, where I could say to them, am I boring you? Do you not want to be here right now? Would you rather just be somewhere else? And you kind of call them out, right? You call them out for their behavior and what they're doing and see how they react. They've made me feel a little uncomfortable. Well, let's put that uncomfort kind of back in their lap, because they're the ones that they created it. And then hopefully if it's a student situation, you can then circle around and say, all right, let's just talk about that interaction we just had. What created it? What are some things that you can do? Even if you don't want to be here, even if you don't want to hear what I'm saying, there's some ways that you can fake it and at least make me feel good.
So how do you think that translates into business? If one business person is working with another and they don't feel listened to, they're probably going to be less likely to want to do business with those people.
True. Again, it just carries over. How do we treat people as human beings? I think at the end of the day, we have to treat people with respect. How many times have you gone to a meeting and you're thinking, well, this meeting could have been an email and I don't know why I'm here, and my gosh, we're all wasting time. But the reality is your supervisor called the meeting, or the meeting's going to happen, right? So show people some respect, show people some courtesy, find ways that you can potentially engage. Maybe you can ask some questions. Maybe you can participate in a way that makes the meeting better to get something out of it. Try to turn that negative, at least perceived on your level, into a positive at some point. Do something as opposed to just saying, well, this is another waste of my time that I'm going to have to get through. On the business level, business dealings, one of the biggest challenges that we have is just communicating across all of these platforms that we've got. We live at a time when there's never been more information at our fingertips, if you think about it. There's vast amounts of information out there available to us. Some of it factual, some of it not, but the reality is that it's all out there, and people are reading it, engaging with it every day, and absorbing it and making decisions based off of it, and then reposting it, resharing it, or bringing it into their everyday conversations that they're having with people. So there's a lot of clutter out there. How do you make sure that your message rises above that clutter? People are scattered across all of those platforms, as I had said earlier. So who do I need to reach? How do I need to reach them? I think in business dealings and in business communication, that's a big part of the hurdles that we face, is that our people are out there all over the place. And what are the platforms that I need to reach? Where are my people at? What messages do I want to take to them? And then what messages, how do I frame them in a way that they work for that particular platform?
What do you mean by that? How do I frame them in a message or in a format that they can connect to? What's framing mean?
I might want to communicate with our alums, the graduates of Lakeland University. And I know that some of them are going to go to Facebook and they're going to get information there. So it's a little bit more bite-sized morsels. We have a monthly e-newsletter that goes out to our alums. That's a little bit more long form, but it's got, different segments and sections, and then you click over and get that information. I could send people a letter. I could go old school, go old fashioned, right? And write them a letter and send that information. We could mail them a postcard. We could send that letter as an email. There's all these different platforms that I can use to reach the same group of people, knowing, though, that some of those alums are going to be more electronic savvy than others. And so I'm going to have to adapt my message based on that platform, based on what they're used to seeing there. We can use Instagram, and Instagram is largely imagery. So how does the message translate to images as opposed to just words. So we're really communicating the same message, but we're communicating in a different ways depending upon the platform we're using, depending upon where the people are that we want to reach. How do we communicate out to them?
A minute ago, you mentioned being in a meeting, and if you're the person sitting there listening to somebody and they're not really focused on what you want to know, but let's look at it from the perspective of the person that's running the meeting. What can the person, and I'm sure there are a number of leaders out there that run meetings that are listening to this right now, what can leaders do to be more inclusive and to communicate better and to have people connect with them?
The one that jumps out to me is picking up nonverbal cues. It's reading and understanding the nonverbal cues that people in the room are giving to you. And obviously that's become more challenging in the age of social media and virtual meetings. It's harder to see that. Do you have the ability to communicate in person? And part of that is reading the room, if you will, right? If you look around and you're running a meeting and people are clearly not engaged, some might be dozing off, some are on their phones, they're on their laptops, they're doing other work. What are some things that you can do to try to re-engage them? And then it's body language, right? There's a difference if I'm talking to you and you're trying to talk to me and I'm sitting like this and I've got kind of my defenses up, right? I've got this barrier in front of me versus I'm on the edge of my chair and I'm leaning in and I'm really engaging with you, Charlie, and I'm interested in this conversation. It's being able to read that, but not only read it, and how do you adjust what you're saying? How do you adjust your message? How do you adjust the tone of your voice, maybe your voice inflection, so that I can go from this to getting people to open up a little bit and be more interested. That ability to adjust is part of the conversation and determine if someone is perhaps upset. What are some things I can do to disarm that? Those are all really powerful soft skills that take time to hone over time.
Now, we're talking about crossing your arms. I mean, you and I have been in communication for a long time. We can look at each other and we can see the difference between this and this, but there are people that haven't studied communication like we have. They probably are going to sense it more than go, he's got his arms crossed. So if they just is sensing enough, how will they pick up on that? And how do you think they'll react to that?
Well, if they don't know, obviously they may become frustrated. That meeting might not go anywhere. That one-on-one conversation or that presentation that they're trying to do might not go anywhere. Listening to podcasts like this one and arming yourself with new information. There are a zillion books out there about communication, right? That you can read. It's being a student of what you're doing, and I think you can be a student of communication all the time. Communication is always changing. When I think back to when I started here and we were just getting a website, there was no social media, as I said before, to where we're at now. We communicate so much differently with prospective students than we ever did before. Not only the traditional age students, but the non-traditional population that we serve. So it's keeping up with the times. And if I'm a business leader, if I'm a team manager, if I'm going to be often speaking in front of people and trying to motivate them, get them to do what I need to do, communication skills are critical. So putting some time into the learning and being a student of communication and understanding how it's changing over time. There's some things that don't change. I think going back to that original definition, it's how we interact with people. But those tools and those platforms that we have to interact are always changing, and understanding how to use them and understanding how to be a better communicator and a more engaging communicator so that I don't have this and I have more of this is important.
So I think if somebody wants to be a better communicator, that means they probably have a sense of curiosity.
Absolutely.
But it seems to me a lot these days, some people just aren't curious. So if somebody wants to improve their soft skills and they're not curious, how do they cultivate curiosity?
That's an interesting question that I've never really thought about. I would wonder, are they curious about anything? Are they curious about things outside of the workplace? I would think at some level they have to be curious about something, right? Maybe there's a hobby that they have or something that they're passionate about, that they're curious about and they're interested in learning more. Well, what is it about those things that trip their trigger, if you will? How can they take some of that passion, that learning that they do, and perhaps translate it to the workplace, the business world? Maybe they have a supervisor above them who is pretty good at it, and hopefully will notice that this person is curious about learning these particular skills that I need them to be. And they have a sit down with them and have that conversation with them. You have to lead a horse to water sometimes and force them to drink, perhaps. But everybody, I think, has an innate curiosity about something, and it's hopefully encouraging them to be curious about what they need to do in a workplace setting or in a relationship setting so that they can be better at it.
I like that. So what it sounds like you're saying is that their curiosity mechanism works. It's just a matter of what can they apply that curiosity machine to. And
I think we're all curious. Social media wouldn't exist if we weren't curious, right? Why do we go on social media? We go on social media to see what everybody's doing, right?
You're right.
And I'm posting what I had for dinner, and I'm telling everybody where I went, and I went on this vacation, and I did this. I mean, you think about it, when we were kids, Dad would break out the vacation tapes, right? And everybody would go, oh my God, we don't want to watch these. But what we do now, we go on vacation, we take all these pictures and we throw them on Facebook, and we throw them on social media, and we expect everybody to sit through them, right? We're all innately curious. We all have a busybody element in us. We all want to know, what are the Joneses doing? All the cliches, right? But they're real because that's what fuels social media, is we're constantly looking at what other people are doing, and people are fueling us. Because as I said, we're all content creators now. And so they're fueling that by throwing out their ideas and their thoughts and their opinions. Maybe they're right and maybe they're not, and it doesn't matter, but it's just all this stuff that they're throwing out there all the time for us to consume.
I know. I remember yesterday, my brother and his wife and one of their kids and grandkids all went out to California, went out to LA to get to see my nephew who had a baby recently. And while they were there, Megan and some of the kids all were standing in front of SoFi Stadium, and they had T-shirts and sweatshirts on that said, the LA Rams. And so I texted her and I said, are you by any chance? And so then about an hour later, I get a picture my brother texted me a picture of where they were sitting in SoFi Stadium while they watched the Dolphins beat the Rams. So you're right about that. We are curious about a lot of things. Now, it's very easy to demonize social media and say, oh, it's the downfall of humanity. But what do you think that social media has actually improved any of our soft skills?
I do. I think it's allowed people to be heard. Some folks who wouldn't otherwise have a platform, and I think it's provided a platform for them. Maybe it's built their confidence a little bit. Maybe it has showed them that they're not alone by posting a particular thought or opinion or a stance on a cause. It showed them that there are other people who think like they do, believe in what they do. So it's provided them a platform to be heard, but then a platform to understand that I'm not alone in this particular thing. To the degree that we can hold people accountable for what they're posting, I think it's helped everybody become, on some level, probably a better communicator. And it's just provided a release at times. When you see something interesting happening, or when you watch something interesting on television, back in the old days, we'd have to wait till Monday when we came to work and talk to our colleagues, right? The old talk around the water cooler thing, or you might call somebody on the telephone and ask if they happen to catch that or see that. But now we can react in real time, and we can post our thoughts in real time and have the ability to interact and engage with other people in real time. And so I think those are definitely some positives that have come about it. It provides for us a place where we can practice our communication skills. And people will say, my gosh, I did not realize that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm not going to share that anymore. So I think there is some of that that goes on as well.
Well, I'm going to ask you a difficult question here, and it just came to my mind. When we talk about where things were and where things are moving, I remember when I was in high school, a computer was the size of a room. And now they say that there's more computing available on our phone than they used to put a man on the moon. So we keep progressing. I mean, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I never thought I would be doing a podcast, and here we are.
Yeah.
This is the difficult question. What do you think is next?
Well, the elephant in the room is AI, right? Artificial intelligence. And I think our ability to understand artificial intelligence, to harness that energy, to harness that ability is important. My mother is aging, and she's not on the computer at all. She's never clicked a mouse in her life and has no desire to. But what I've told her is, if she answers the phone, she uses the phone as a primary way to communicate. And I've just warned her, be careful, Mom, if you pick up a phone call and it sounds like me, and I'm asking you for money, or I'm asking you to do something that sounds unusual, hang up the phone and then call me and make sure that it's me. Because unfortunately, whenever there are breakthroughs, whenever there are new things, we have bad people who find ways to use them improperly, to do bad things with them, right? So I think harnessing AI and understanding ways that it can be used positively. I'm on a university campus. There are ways that students can write papers by typing in, Chat GTP, type in some concepts and tell Chat GTP to spit out a 10-page paper on this particular topic touching on these things. You type that in, and about a minute later, you've got your 10-page paper, and it's a unique paper, right? So you can run it through a plagiarism check, but it's not going to really set off any bells and whistles because it's a unique piece of work. Well, let's teach people how to use those tools in a way that's positive. Somebody who may be in a workplace setting, who's been doing the same job, same role for a couple of years, now suddenly has been charged with writing all the press releases for the company. They've never written a press release before. Well, that too can help them. Let's teach them how to use those tools so that they can be positive and productive. So what's next? I don't know exactly what's next, but all I know is whatever it is that comes out, let's figure out how we're learning how to use it in ways that are positive, and trying to get ahead of it and harness it so that the bad guys, when they get a hold of it, we can stay just a little bit ahead of their curve so that we can make sure it doesn't hurt us.
Absolutely. What soft skills do you think are the most important ones for effective leadership?
Oh, gosh. Communication. Obviously, we've been spending a whole lot of time talking about it, so it's critical. The ability to be an effective communicator, the ability to read the room and see those nonverbal skills and react to them. I think mentorship is an important soft skill for leaders. The ability to take people under your wing, if you will, who are learning, and be able to coach them up, show them the way, if you will, be it your workplace culture, be it particular skill sets, be it how to be a better team member, whatever. But the ability to mentor people, the ability to motivate in a way that's positive, getting people to do what you need them to do in a way that they're enthusiastic and they want to do it. They want to be part of your team. And that's a mix of reality and the realities of the workplace, but having some fun along the way too, and making it a place where people want to be there and are engaged. I think empathy is important. Understanding where people are. I think understanding, especially in this day and age, that work isn't everything. Gosh, we spend an awful lot of time at work throughout our lives, right? But work isn't everything. And I think if we understand that most people are working to live as opposed to living to work, that's really important in creating that space for them. Another quick one just is delegation. Understanding you can't do everything and that this person can't necessarily do everything. So how do I divvy up or delegate these tasks in a way that everybody's kind of sharing a piece of the load and feeling engaged and, again, part of the team? Those are some ones, I guess, that kind of come to mind right away.
Well, let me ask you one final question. It has to do with mentorship. Let's say we've got somebody that feels like they need a mentor, but they might be a little too intimidated to ask somebody. How would you advise them to find the courage to ask? Because everybody that I've ever had as a mentor willingly and eagerly mentored me. And so I think the person being asked to mentor would be willing to do that. But how do you get somebody that's maybe a little shy to get out of their comfort zone enough to ask for a mentor?
I think you could ease into it a little bit. You could talk to them about how you'd like to improve. Maybe it's in a workplace. Maybe it's just in a personal space. And you have a conversation with them about where are some places that you'd like to improve, setting some improvement goals, perhaps if you're in a workplace setting. And it's kind of backing into the conversation. Well, let's talk about ways that you could do that. What do you think? What are some ways that you could do that? And maybe it's just gently suggesting to them, there are some people probably on the team or in your life that potentially would be good mentors for you. What would you think about entering into a relationship with Charlie or Sue or whoever? I like Sue. She's great. We work together all the time. Okay, well, what would you think about approaching Sue to work with you maybe more in kind of a mentor-mentee relationship? And it's almost selling them on it. And showing them that it would benefit them. And hopefully then there's some buy-in on their part. Maybe it's something they didn't see, or it's just giving them a little bit more confidence to approach that person.
Well, David, thank you so much for being my guest here today. David and I used to work together a lot at Lakeland University as the theater director. He would write stories about our shows. And so a lot of times he would ask me to, what would you call it? Foam at the mouth?
We would call it foaming at the mouth, right? And I would say, just foam at the mouth, Charlie. Just give me all stuff. And I would get your emails and you would just give me stuff. And you gave me everything I possibly needed. You answered every question I had and more. And I would just rework it into these stories. And they wrote themselves because the shows that you always did at Lakeland were fantastic. So.
Well, and the other way that we worked together was at Lakeland, we had our own TEDx event, and David and I were on the steering committee for that, so we worked well together. So, David, I miss you. I've enjoyed this a whole lot, spending some time with you and reminiscing. Please give everyone at Lakeland my best and tell them I said hi.
I will, very much so. Charlie, I really appreciate this. I miss working with you. We had a great relationship dating back to when I was at the Sheboygan Press and you came to UW Sheboygan as the theater director.
Right.
I think that's when we first got introduced to each other. When I wrote a story about you. So we go way back.
We do. Let's say someone wanted to find out some more information about Lakeland University. Where would they go? How would they do that?
Real simple. Just visit the website, lakeland.edu. We offer online learning, and who knows? Maybe you're a non-traditional or traditional age learner out there who would surf around and see a program that might pique your interest. And it wouldn't be hard to find me on the website, so you could reach out to me as well. I'd be happy to give anybody more information.
Well, David, thanks. It's been great spending some time with you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Charlie. I really appreciate you could have asked a million people to do this, and I really appreciate being asked to share some time with you. It was really good.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. And thank you to all of our visitors today. Thank you for joining us for Soft Skills, Strong Results. I'm Charlie Krebs, and remember that soft skills are the human side of success. Thank you.